so much better, so much more fun than it used to be. Because remember in the 70s, the 80s, even the early 90s, you had to spend hours on end in a studio. And
when you've lived as wild and unrestrained a life as Rod Stewart has, regret seems like a luxury you can't afford. For decades, the legendary rocker defined himself through an image of untamed freedom, a man who lived by his own rules, answered to no one, and treated the world like an endless playground designed specifically for his pleasure. But even icons have moments of unexpected vulnerability. In recent years, as Rod Stewart has reflected on a lifetime of choices, relationships, and missed opportunities, he's been surprisingly candid about one relationship that stands out from all the others. It's not the one that made headlines, nor is it the one that defined his career. Instead, it's the relationship that got away, the one he believes he never should have let slip through his fingers. The Rod Stewart we know from the public record is a man of contradictions. He's the charming bad boy who commanded stages and hearts with equal intensity. He's the rocker whose husky voice could seduce millions, whose music became the soundtrack to generations of romance and rebellion. But behind the legend is a human being who, like everyone else, has been shaped by love and loss in ways that often catch him off guard. The woman at the center of this regret isn't the first model he dated, nor is she the last. She's Rachel Hunter, the stunning New Zealand model who entered his life at a moment when he desperately needed stability, even if he didn't fully understand it at the time. To understand the significance of Rachel Hunter in Rod Stewart's narrative, we must first understand the man he was when they met. By the late 1980s, Rod Stewart had already lived what most people would consider multiple lifetimes. He had clawed his way up from poverty and rejection, enduring humiliation and setbacks that would have broken lesser spirits. He had built an empire on his talent and charisma, becoming one of the most recognizable rock stars in the world. He had seduced countless women, been married twice before, and fathered multiple children. By conventional standards, he had achieved everything a rock star could possibly dream of. Yet for all his success and fame, something fundamental was missing from his life. The pattern of Rod Stewart's romantic relationships tells a specific story. Time and again, he found himself drawn to extraordinarily beautiful women, tall, glamorous models who fit a very particular aesthetic. Time and again, he brought those women into his world only to eventually drift away from them, drawn back to the endless stream of temptations that celebrity provided. His first marriage to Alana Collins had produced children and moments of genuine domesticity, but ultimately couldn't contain the restless energy that defined Rod Stewart. His relationship with Kelly Berg, the Sports Illustrated model, had followed a similar trajectory. Each relationship began with genuine attraction and passion, but inevitably wound up in the same place, with Rod moving on to the next chapter while his partner was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered expectations. This was the context in which Rachel Hunter entered Rod Stewart's life. It was the late 1980s, and Rod was spending his nights in Los Angeles clubs, still caught in the gravitational pull of his own legend. Rachel was young, only 21 years old, and she possessed everything that had always captivated him: striking blonde beauty, height, presence, and an elegance that suggested untapped potential. But there was something different about her. There was something in her that made Rod Stewart believe, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, that he had finally found the woman who could change him, who could anchor him, who could make him want to be something other than what he had been. The speed with which their relationship escalated was breathtaking. Within 3 months of meeting, Rod and Rachel were married. For a man who had spent decades playing the field, who had built a reputation on his refusal to be tied down, this represented a fundamental shift in his thinking. It wasn't just a marriage, it was a declaration of intent, a statement that he was ready to step away from the life he had been living. More importantly, it was an investment in the belief that this particular woman was worth fundamentally changing for. The early years of their marriage were, by Rod's own account, different from what had come before. When Rachel became pregnant, Rod didn't panic or pull away as he had in previous relationships. Instead, he embraced fatherhood with a genuine enthusiasm that suggested he had finally arrived at a place of emotional maturity. Their daughter Renee was born in 1992, and their son Liam followed in 1994. For the first time in his life, Rod Stewart appeared genuinely committed to the responsibilities of family life. He wasn't sneaking around with other women. He wasn't maintaining the elaborate system of deceptions that had characterized his previous relationships. By his own insistence, Rachel Hunter was the one woman he never cheated on. This fact alone speaks volumes about what she meant to him. Yet despite Rod's commitment and genuine effort to be different, despite the children they created together and the life they were building, the marriage began to deteriorate. The responsibility that had once seemed appealing started to feel constraining. The stability he thought he wanted began to feel like a gilded cage. Rachel, who had left the world of modeling and celebrity to focus on family life, began to feel the toll of being married to one of the world's most famous rock stars. The attention, the chaos, the endless demands on their time and privacy. These things that Rod had long since made peace with became increasingly unbearable to her. The age difference between them, which neither had considered particularly significant during their passionate early days, began to reveal itself as a more substantial factor than anyone had anticipated. Rachel had married a man nearly 2 decades her senior when she was barely an adult herself. While Rod was revisiting the pleasures of family life, Rachel was beginning to understand the sacrifices that came with being married to a rock legend. The glamour wore off. The excitement faded. What remained was a fundamental incompatibility between what Rachel needed from life and what Rod's existence as a rock star could provide. In 1999, Rachel Hunter made the decision that would haunt Rod Stewart for years to come. She walked away from the marriage. It wasn't a decision made in anger or desperation, but rather a quiet recognition that the life they had built together wasn't sustainable. She wanted something different, a quieter existence, a more normal life, an escape from the constant whirlwind of celebrity that defined Rod's world. For Rachel, leaving was an act of self-preservation. For Rod, her departure was devastating in a way that no previous romantic rejection had ever been. The months following Rachel's departure were difficult ones for Rod Stewart. Unlike his previous breakups, which he had weathered with a combination of humor and cynicism, the end of his marriage to Rachel seemed to truly wound him. For someone who had spent his entire adult life convinced that he could simply move on to the next woman whenever a relationship became inconvenient, the realization that Rachel was genuinely gone hit him with unexpected force. There was a 6-month period during which he existed in a state of genuine emotional turmoil. Even his bandmates noticed the difference. One of his bass players, recognizing that Rod was emotionally fragile, deliberately withheld the phone number of a woman who had caught his attention, a photographer named Penny Lancaster, because he believed Rod needed time to process his grief rather than immediately throw himself into another relationship. What's particularly poignant about this period in Rod Stewart's life is that, for the first time, he seemed to fully comprehend what he had lost. Rachel Hunter wasn't just another conquest or another chapter in his ongoing saga of romantic escapades. She was the woman who had made him believe he could be something other than what he had always been. She was the mother of his children and the partner he had chosen to be faithful to. She was the woman who had asked him to step away from a life of endless temptation and choose instead to build something real. When she realized he couldn't ultimately deliver on that promise, she left. And in her absence, Rod finally understood the weight of his choice. Years later, in interviews reflecting on this period of his life, Rod has been remarkably honest about his feelings. He has acknowledged that the age difference between them was likely insurmountable. A woman of 21 is not yet fully formed. Her sense of self is still developing, still becoming. A man of 45, even if he's trying to be better, carries decades of habits and patterns that are difficult to overcome. What seemed like passion and compatibility in the early stages gradually revealed itself to be a fundamental mismatch. Rachel had needed a partner who could offer her a normal life. Rod, despite his best intentions, could only offer her a version of his extraordinary existence. The remarkable thing about Rod Stewart's reflection on Rachel Hunter is that it doesn't come with excuses or justifications. He doesn't blame her for not understanding the demands of his career. He doesn't suggest that she was too young to appreciate what they had. Instead, he seems to have arrived at a place where he can acknowledge his own limitations, the ways in which his nature as a rock star, his deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, and his fundamental personality made it impossible for him to be the partner Rachel needed him to be. This is not a man trying to rewrite history or manipulate the narrative. This is a man confronting the genuine reality that he let go of something irreplaceable. When Penny Lancaster eventually entered his life, after that 6-month period of genuine mourning for Rachel, Rod approached the relationship with a different consciousness. He had learned something from losing Rachel. He understood, perhaps for the first time, that the women in his life were not interchangeable, that they were not simply players in an endless game that he could manipulate according to his desires. By the time he married Penny Lancaster in 2007, he had undergone a subtle but profound shift in perspective. He was a different man than the one who had let Rachel walk away. Today, Rod Stewart is married to Penny Lancaster, and by all accounts, they have built a genuine partnership. He is a grandfather, a man in his 80s who has lived more lives than most people could imagine. He has had more chances than most people deserve, more second chances, more third and fourth chances. Yet when he reflects on his romantic history, it's Rachel Hunter who stands out. It's Rachel who represents the road not taken, the different version of himself that he might have become if he had possessed the discipline and self-awareness to truly change. The story of Rod Stewart and Rachel Hunter is ultimately a very human story. It's about a man who had everything except what he most needed, and a woman who asked him to give up the life he had always known in exchange for something more meaningful. It's about the collision between a rock star's essential nature and the demands of genuine partnership. It's about the ways in which we often don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. And it's about the remarkable grace that Rod Stewart shows in acknowledging, after all these years, that Rachel Hunter was the woman he shouldn't have let go, not because she was the most beautiful or the most glamorous, but because she was the one who made him want to become something better than he was. That's a regret that even a rock legend can't quite overcome. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.